Hello everyone. Today I'll be giving you a reading update. I have completed uh, 3 books so far through the summer. Although that might sound impressive, I was already reading one of them, but um, I've completed 3, and I'll also be giving you some kind of uh, reflections on not only those books but also on ones I am currently reading. Yeah. The first one I completed was one I've already talked about, but it is Translating Myself and Others by Jhumpa Lahiri. This is actually uh, a series of essays about about Jhumpa Lahiri and her kind of personal reflections on becoming a translator. And I absolutely adored all of these essays. She specifically focuses on Italian, the Italian language, and she goes through and kind of talks about her experiences of translating various, not only herself but other people's works into Italian, and then also translating Italian text into English. Um, and my kind of central reflection around this book um, is around how, you know, um, we cannot kind of become separate or emancipated from our present circumstance or from our language, right? And, through translation, these books are not just kind of um, being copied and pasted, they're actually becoming a different text entirely. Um, and as Lahiri says, for to translate is to look into a mirror and see someone other than oneself. So if we think about these texts as on opposite sides of the mirror, with one side being American or one side being Italian, to translate them is to change them, is to go beyond the mirror, right? Um, and just kind of um, like out of interest, she talks about lots of writers that I'm interested in. Like, for example, Calvino, who she kind of describes as being, so universally and internationally loved because he kind of creates his own kind of rules and norms and worlds, right? He's a real world builder. Uh, and then she also talks about, you know, I also got, introduced to various Italian authors and writers that I didn't know about. Um, and also she kind of in the last essay, which I found to be really really kind of profound, is where she kind of talks about the simultaneous process by which she begins translating Ovid's Metamorphosis while her mother is passing away, and those kind of processes kind of merging together in a way in which she comes to see her mother's passing through an Ovidian or Ovid kind of mythological perspective because of the translating task that she is undergoing, um, which I thought was, uh, you know, although very sad, also very beautiful and poetic. The next book I'm very proud of for completing. I finally finished James Joyce's A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Although this was quite a difficult task to finish this book, I think it was really important for me to read, especially in this moment in my life when um, I am still kind of in the environment that I grew up in, let's say, and I am still kind of um, wanting to pursue artistic means as to kind of go outside of these social surroundings, let's say. Um, but still having this kind of deep connection with the things around me and the things I've kind of grown up in, like that I'm a product of those environments. Um, and for Joyce, I think this is a story of that. It's a story of an artist, Stephen Dedalus, a young boy with a kind of chip on his shoulder, which has been created because of the environment he's grown up in, of an environment of reactive religion and nationalism. Irish, of course, so Irish religion and nationalism in the face of, brutal colonization, um, in which people kind of look to faith as a way to deal with the, everyday melancholic that they experience. Um, and the artist is kind of trying to strive against this, right? Um, and I think this is well said by Stephen Dedalus in one of the final passages when he states, I will tell you what I will do and what I will not do. I will not serve that in which I no longer believe, whether it call itself my home, my fatherland, or my church. And I will try to express myself in some mode of life or art as freely as I can and as wholly as I can. So essentially, this text is a kind of it's a celebration of free creativity and artistry, um, uh, and it's kind of you know uh, ever present want to be free and to kind of shackle its surroundings, to be free from the shackles of its surroundings, let's say. Um, and yeah, it documents Stephen Dedalus's life as he goes through various boarding schools, as he goes through the church, as he kind of grows incredibly guilty around certain things he does, and then how he reacts to that, and how he eventually comes out as someone who says no. In simple terms, I want to be an artist. I want to spread my wings. I want, I, you know, I am kind of, I need to get out, right? And I think it was honestly, if uh, it was a similar kind of read to Dubliners, I think I would kind of characterize it as like a um expanded version of the Dubliners short story, um, where it kind of documents this like melancholic frustration that Joyce obviously has with Dublin and with Ireland. It's a true it's kind of a true window into his soul, I feel like. Yeah. The next book we've got is John Williams's Stoner, which I know is quite popular at the moment, which I think is great. It's a really wonderful book. I read this in about a day, actually. I basically couldn't put it down. Um, if you don't know, it literally just documents um, the story of Stoner, um, who is this basically this English professor, and it's his whole life. And I enjoyed it of I think because of the kind of philosophical readings I've been doing recently, which are all about kind of trying to agitate and to go against this kind of Western myth of exceptionalism, human exceptionalism, and how the Western canon is just um, kind of like populated by all these kind of a line of great men. Where Stoner is a celebration of the insignificant life, the quiet life, right? Um, he, doesn't kind of, he becomes um, a senior member of a English faculty, which obviously is quite an accomplishment, but he doesn't kind of go on to these, amazing things. He kind of marries the wrong woman. He gets into these work politics. He has a complicated relationship with his family, with his wife. He has an affair. Many things like this. It's a incredibly I don't really like using the word, but human story, and about the kind of significance of insignificance, and it's like a kind of there's a point being made, right, where John Williams is just documenting a single life, um, and he's like, this is what a single life is. Look at the kind of range the richness of emotion, of feeling, of narrative, just in one single life. That is the point being made here. Uh, it's very sad. It's a very sad book, um, but nonetheless, it's a really worthwhile. I think quite easy to read. Very beautiful prose, I have to say. And it kind of sums it up in the final page when Stoner declares to himself. Sorry, the narrator declares that Stoner knew that he was himself and he knew what he had been. Right, away from the grandeur, away from all these things. What really matters is you know who you are and you know who you want to be. Okay, those are unfortunately only the only three books that I finished. Um, but now I will get on to my current reads. So I hope to finish this one soon, and it's going quite well. I'm currently reading the Genealogy of Morals by Nietzsche. Um, so far, this has been actually quite uh, surprisingly smooth reading because I'm familiar with the genealogical method through my kind of interest in Foucault, and I found it so I've and then but with the kind of added caveat that Nietzsche is quite a personality and he kind of is playful and he is extremely literary, right? He has all these kind of he's obsessed with the ancient Greeks, so he has all these kind of calls onto them. And but besides from that, I think this book is more foundational for me. It kind of puts things into concepts, all these ideas of kind of genealogy, so breaking things down and kind of getting them away from their neutral or natural uh, kind of position and putting them into the political and the historical, or in itself kind of challenging the human subject, the kind of sovereign Western man of enlightenment, right? Which Nietzsche is all about breaking down, right? Which is, a central part of everything I do. Um, and so, yeah, I think I'll talk about this more in depth in relation to other kind of philosophy that I've been reading. But I mean, I don't know. I think I, for some reason, I just had this notion of Nietzsche. For some reason, I don't know why, because it's so obvious to me now that he is like he's not like the most serious person. Not in the way he obviously, his things are very serious, but he is super playful in how he writes, and he's super kind of poetic, and he will make jokes and stuff, which I didn't really realize. But anyway, yeah, I'll kind of go way more into depth with this one um, when I'm finished. But yeah, it's basically being kind of putting the things I've learned so far into context as, this book is kind of pivotal for lots of those people, whether that be in critique or in inspiration. But yeah, um, quite enjoyable so far, I have to say. Yeah, I um especially am interested in these two kind of pathologies that he's talking about: bad conscience and the aesthetic ideal, and what that does to people, and how we can't really think about the human world without those two things, um, and how we kind of do rip ourselves apart with all these kind of expectations we have of ourselves, whether that be because of you know religion, like we see with Joyce, where people kind of hate themselves because they are not like this completely pure being, God, right? That is what Nietzsche talks about a lot. So it's good that there's lots of interconnections, obviously. There's even interconnections with Nietzsche and Lahiri's kind of notion about um, artists and translation and language and stuff like that. The next book is my reading club book, which is why it's huge. It's Marx's Das Kapital. I mean, this is itself also super um, incongruence with maybe not incongruence, but there's obviously some German relation with Nietzsche, right? Um, and I mean, Marx, like. I was discussing this with my friend who I'm reading it with. Marx kind of thinks about um, how we kind of view the value that we put that commodities have. So like any commodity has a like value to it. Marx kind of talks about how we don't really comprehend the social relations and the labor behind those values. And so, I kind of relate that to Nietzsche's genealogical method, where we have to kind of reveal and take away the veil of these commodities of inherent value and like let's look to the actual labor that's happening, right? Um, in anything, right? In anything that we do, we have to think about the people who are actually putting these things together. What conditions are they in and such. But yeah, I will also talk about this. Obviously, if it's gargantuan. We've only a couple chapters in. Um, but yeah, I'll talk about this a lot more in detail for sure. Um, but yeah, it's another one that I think is just putting lots of things into context that I've already read. But it's also, I mean, I'm also a little bit um, pleasantly surprised. Not as much as Nietzsche, but Marx is also extremely playful in his prose, and he does kind of have, many like literary kind of metaphors that he uses to explain his theories. Whether that be Shakespeare or um, anyone else, he with these kind of complex economics, he is not afraid to put in a few theatrical references, which I quite like. And I'll talk about these two especially, more in detail soon. The final book I will talk about is the one I just started yesterday, which is my new fictional read after Stoner. Um, it couldn't possibly be further apart from Stoner, even though they're both American, but it is William Burroughs' The Naked Lunch. I mean, look at that. That is pretty freaky. Uh, this will be my second Burroughs. I read Junkie a couple months ago, and I think Junkie was his first one, and this is a lot more experimental. I assume I've read a couple pages of this so far, and it kind of almost seems like, kind of ironically, I actually don't really like saying the word junkie, but it is the title of the book. But anyway, because I don't really think non-drug addicts should say junkie. But anyway, uh, it's almost seems like junkie, but on like in like a hallucinogenic state. It's really, really, it just rolls on, and the kind of descriptions in this book, the bodily descriptions of drug abuse, but also of the kind of drug process and the sexual politics of it all, in this kind of dark American world, um, are both extremely impressive, I guess is the word, because it's just a level of writing that is I find really amazing, but also a little grotesque. Where I don't think I'm gonna be able to read this in a short sitting like I did with Stoner or with even Lahiri's essays. Like, um, yeah, I'll read you the back to give you a little bit of context. If you don't know, Burroughs is a kind of American postmodern writer who was very influential. A fun fact is that the band Steely Dan's name comes from this book, The Naked Lunch. So on the back it says, "Welcome to Interzone. Say hello to Bradley the buyer, the narcotics agent with a contact habit. Most disgusting thing I ever stood still for. Attend AJ's annual party, where the lovable prankster's repartee often refers to future events, and the punch is to be treated with extreme caution. Meet Doctor Fingers Schaefer, the lobotomy kid, and his giant centipede, the complete American de-anxietized man. Make the acquaintance of his mentor, the unforgettable Dr. Benway. Balderdash, my boy, we're scientists, pure scientists." And this is what J.G. Ballard, another writer, said on the back. He said this: "True genius and first mythographer of the mid-20th century, William Burroughs is the lineal successor to James Joyce." So that obviously got me going, right? But anyway, those are all the books I have for you today. Thanks so much for listening, and I will see you next time.